the drugs people are taking right now to lose weight quickly is a fad. There's not enough history and research behind them. They work, yes, but when you're done, do they teach you anything?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with your...
You just rebound, right? Which is very inflammatory on the body. Your
Right.
body's like, finally, all this weight's gone. And then it's like, oh, God, and it gains it all back. It's a lot of stress.
And we were just talking, a few minutes ago about longevity and beating genetics. So if you're taking something like that and have that kind of stress and rebound, now you're fighting against all that good knowledge we just expressed a little while ago. So that's an example of things just, common sense fighting reality. I do it in a way where it involves some natural products that are amino acid based that bring up your hormone levels to where they should be.
Well, we're back at the Full Fuel Podcast with your host, Matt Tack.
Dr. Alfred Alessi.
And we have a super special guest today, Zeke Samples. That's his real last name, too. And I'm going to describe Zeke here. Love it. With over 25 years of experience in the health and wellness industry, and once a weight loss patient himself, Zeke has overcome the past physical limiting challenges of scoliosis and kyphosis.
Yes.
Is that actually
Ask him.
Exactly. You did a good job there, buddy.
of the spine during his teenage years, to now lead a life dedicated to helping others and achieve their health and wellness goals. Zeke is a past national champion and runner-up world champion in the physique competitions, and pairs that experience with lifelong knowledge to his personal commitment to helping patients of all ages needing nutritional and expertise guidance.
Yes.
Welcome, Zeke Samples.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This has been in the making for quite some time now, and I like being around you, but I also don't like being around you because I literally feel like a peanut.
Dude, yeah.
I remember, I'll never forget that one time we were sitting together and I was looking at you seriously, just like listening, and you said, I lost my concentration because you keep looking at me like...
Yeah, I mean, it's like the first thing you notice when the dude walks in, his arms are bigger than my legs. I'm like, all right, like that make me feel a little insecure here, but dude's just jacked.
It's absolute unbelievable. You know what was one of the coolest experience was when I got to kind of quasi work out with you. I met up with you, and you were just like slanging around weight. I'm just like pushing on, like, holy, this guy is an absolute monster.
But meanwhile, I'm one of the nicest people we will meet. So
Absolutely.
You really are, yeah.
Hands down.
they have to turn my mic up today. So
We're going to jump into a little bit of everything. We want to jump into your coaching side as well. One of the things that I think is really cool about you is really the story of how kind of everything came about. You dealing with scoliosis at a very young age, a spinal issue that eventually you had to reach out to people and learn. So tell us a little bit about that, then how it led to becoming a national champion and a runner-up world champion in the bodybuilding physique competitions.
a lot of fortitude and mindset. That's what it required. Yeah. So at 14, I wasn't really, in my teenage years, I wasn't really the healthy kind of person. I wasn't taught about nutrition. My family has an athletic background, but as generations progress, even our parents, they were taught differently than the grandparents were. I mean, the weight room was the place that slowed you down. Now it's somewhere that you have to be in order to be the best. So even the mindset shifts that we see today were even apparent back then. It just rolls through technology and what people actually believe to be true with nutrition and with exercise. I'm sure you see all that evolve in different ways. So for me, I started out as not really knowing much about anything, but then I was diagnosed at 14 and a half years old with this back issue, scoliosis and kyphosis. Wore a back brace for 2 years, high school years, at a time when I was accepted to a prestigious boarding school that didn't allow cars on campus. It didn't, if it was a mixer with a girls' school, it was a sign-up sheet. Trip to the mall, it was a sign-up sheet on a bus, that kind of thing. So very difficult part of my life to accept that what I felt was a defect at that time in an environment where I was around kids that were there for athletics, that were there for scholastic reasons, and trying to make friends around all of that was very challenging. That's how it kind of started, was around my high school years.
What eventually led to you start competing in bodybuilding?
Well, it kind of evolved that way only because I became a product of my product. It was a passion for me to start to understand exercise, and a fear. It was fear-driven or fear-based because I was told I'd have metal rods put in my spine if I didn't correct my spine on my own. So I had just enough growth platelets left in my back at that age to make a decision, and it was all up to me. Was I going to capitalize on this moment, this short 2-year span of my life where I could learn about nutrition, I could learn about exercise, and I decided to dive into it, but nobody was there to really help me. I was going to see a physical therapist who was a 65-year-old woman at a local place in Orange, Virginia, down from the school that, was just kind of into basic exercises. It was nothing that was going to be like, hey, this is what you need to do to put muscle around this part of your back, or, your biceps complement your back muscles when you're exercising. So make sure you don't overtrain them. There was none of that. So I had to learn all that through just magazines. And through that period of my life, I read and absorbed as much as I could through the magazines. That's kind of where it started.
You became like obsessive over it a little bit, huh?
Yeah, because I looked at it as a point to save my life. It wasn't for any self-gratification or glitz and glam. It was just, if I look like this guy that I see in these pictures, then there's no way I'm going to have metal rods put in my back. I'm going to win.
Yeah. A little back against the wall kind of story, It's like, it's now or never.
Yeah.
That'll test what you got, though, for sure.
Yep.
That's awesome, man.
One of the things that you did during that stage, though, you reached out to people. I believe you reached out to like an elite trainer at that time as well that was in your area. And you're like, hey, this is something I want. Is this something you could help me with? Am I right on that?
Yeah. So at that time, it was Lee Haney had just finished competing. He was 8-time Mr. Olympia. And he had won more than Arnold Schwarzenegger did, but Arnold went to the movies where Lee was more of a family man. He kind of reclused from the sport, dedicated to family time after he retired. But at that time, he still owned his gyms, and they were in Atlanta, Georgia. At that time, my grandparents were still alive. They lived in Sandy Springs, which was a suburb right outside of Atlanta. So we made a personal training appointment for me to go train with Lee. At that time, it was around the same time that I was told that I didn't have to wear my back brace anymore. So to me, it wasn't a finish line. Like, it was like a golf clap moment. Like, congratulations, you killed yourself. You're stressed out and you busted your tail for 2 years. You don't have to do this anymore. Okay, next. So I was like, no, I've learned all this stuff. Yeah, I can apply it for the rest of my life, but I'm also learning about this sport called bodybuilding and the sport called muscle and fitness, and I want to see what I can do to challenge myself on a next level. Let me see if I can do what these guys have accomplished. So that's what got me to make the appointment with Lee. And he was $250 an hour, which is still expensive today, but back then in 1995, it was really expensive. But I did it as a means to see if he would take me under his wing. There was a hidden purpose behind that appointment. It wasn't to get the t-shirt, which he actually had with his face on it. It was to get him to help me and take me under his wing. So at that time, I worked out, and the first workout was good. It was upper body. We kind of went through some exercises. I told him at that meeting in his office what I wanted to do and my real purpose for being there. And he said, well, I'm really busy. I've got this thing called my Harvest House, which takes underprivileged kids off the streets of Atlanta, teaches them about farming, teaches them about countryside, because they weren't raised that way. They don't have these things. They were probably raised around drugs and on the streets. So it was a way for him to give back to the community. And he said, let me talk to my wife, and why don't you come back tomorrow for another workout? And at that time, my dad and I looked at each other, and I said, well, we don't really have the money to pay for another workout. And he leaned over and said, I didn't say you had to pay me. So that was a really interesting moment and a fun moment, because now I got to train with this icon again for free. So we came back the next day, and that day we trained legs, but we actually ended up at the gym at the same time together. So as he parked, we were parking, we kind of walked in together, and he had a fanny pack on. fanny packs are coming back now, but at the time they were cool back then. Yeah. And he had this fanny pack on, and the reason that's significant is because, to my story, he didn't go to his office. He didn't go to the bathroom. He didn't leave my side. We walked straight to the gym floor and did the leg workout. I was really known for my leg strength at that time because, one, I was reading magazines, but two, I never put spinal compression on my back with squats. I would always do things like leg pressing or lunging. And I mean, I could leg press 1,400 pounds just for reps at 18 years old. And he had this vertical leg press. The listeners, I don't know if you know what that means, but it's basically, you can imagine yourself sitting in a space shuttle about to take off to the moon, and the position that you see those guys in the movies, they're on their back, they're vertically looking up at the sky. Well, that's how you position yourself in this leg press. So when your feet go on this platform, it's above your head, like where the ceiling would be. So if you screw that exercise up, you have all this weight that's going to come down on you, and you're not going to be able to crawl out.
If you want to hear your question answered live on the show, submit it to ask@fullfuel.com. Check out the Optimizers program where we build max muscle, improve longevity, and get guys freaking shredded so that they can crush it at life for as long as possible.
Live full fueled, live beyond limits, baby. They have one at MI40, right?
Yeah.
You take a short video.
Yeah. But that's my favorite exercise because it's so challenging, but at the same time, it takes all the compression off your back. So it's full power. And I think that's the moment that I really impressed him because he just kept putting plates on there and I just kept doing it. So we walked back to his office and he unzipped his fanny pack and he said, I've given a lot of thought to what you asked me and I'm willing to say yes if you can come down and train, with me all summer. I was like, okay, yeah, I can do that. Oh, yeah. And he pulled out a workout sheet and he pulled out a nutrition plan that he'd already written. So around his waist, that whole time from leaving the parking lot to walking on the gym floor, he had made his decision pretty much for the most part, 90% of it. I mean, he still could have never revealed what he had to provide, but he had it already decided at some point the night before, the morning of, that he was going to help this kid. So when I kept to what I needed to do, my dedication to prove myself, I shined to a point where he said, yeah, I'm going to move forward and hey, this is what I got. Let's get started. So I carry that on in my life with a lot of challenging moments I have now that have to do with situations where you're starting a new career. You're starting, like you guys, you're starting, the cohorts and everything with the business. You're starting the new side of the practice. There's probably some fear in there, like, is it going to be successful? Are we going to do it right? Are we going to be able to make everybody happy? Are we going to get good reviews? All those things. It's like, yes, they're valuable concerns, but at the end of the day, they're concerns that in a way you can't even control. You just have to keep pushing forward because you're always going to be in charge of your destiny. And it rolls down to health and fitness too. It's one of the very few things that we have as a human being that we can always be in charge of. Yeah. What we put in our mouths, what we do with our bodies.
100%. And that's like the goal with this whole movement of Full Fueled is like you're in control, right? Like we can't do it for you. We can give you the tools, we can give you the building blocks, but ultimately you had to do it, right? You had to do the work. I want to touch on something with the term bodybuilding, right? Because I think people hear that and they think that means you're competing or that necessarily means you're trying to go elite like you did, right? You were the 1% of the 1%. That it doesn't have to be for everyone, right? And most people are never going to do that, but you still need to body build, right? What I deal with in my practice all the time is spinal corrective care, things like what you had, scoliosis, kyphosis, where your spine is moving out of balance because the muscles around it are not proportionately strong or weak, right? So if we build our body up, obviously you correct those deficiencies, but then building your muscular structure is a longevity play. Now your body can handle injury, it can handle faulty movements, right? You're less likely to get hurt. You bend down to grab something off the floor or pick up your kid. If you're getting injured, like opening a drawer, or like you sneeze or something and you're getting hurt, that core strength is not there. So I think that's a big thing for like our audience is like bodybuilding isn't like some far away thing I'll never attain. It's like, no, everyone should be doing it to some degree. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, the definition vocabularily, if that's a word, would be exactly what you said, but an image might be a guy in his underwear, but that's not really the truth behind it. It's a 65-year-old can be bodybuilding just in a different way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, muscle is just such a, I mean, Gabrielle Lyon is just one of those, she's obviously wrote her book, and
We'll get her on here eventually.
it's becoming we will. It's becoming just like that topic of how important muscular density is as you progress later in life. And there's just like, obviously, I think my feed's full of it too. I'm constantly like feeding my audience that there's never not a bad time to start building muscle mass. Yeah. Like you can literally, they had this one the other day. A lot of people send me stuff now too. So I'm like, thanks for the audience that sends me these reels of like these, this guy, this was me at 60 years old, but here's me at 71. It's like, I mean, he was like floppy and now he's like a jacked and he's, doing plyometrics and has like an actual vertical leap
like a
at 71
box
years old.
he jumped on that you sent me. It was
Oh, did I send
impressive.
you that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that goes to show you that it's like, it's not too late. Like humans are capable of anabolism forever, right? It's not like you get to a certain age and your body's all of a sudden like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's just a matter of you need more protein at an older age, right? To make that happen. You need more input. But it's easier if you don't stop, right? So like the three of us are probably never going to stop working out. I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm going to take a few years off. No, it's something I just do, right? But that will allow me to stay in that shape forever, right?
Absolutely.
And I think there's some thought and conversation too that goes behind genetics and getting started the earliest that you can in your life, making that decision earlier, because then you can beat some of that genetic code too.
For sure.
Yeah, Peter Attia talks actually a lot about that, on how it's not necessarily like when you know your genetics, and then they call it the E4 over the E4. So one of the big things is do you have dementia potentially in that genotype? Do you have Parkinson's in those genotypes? Which I have Parkinson's in my family. And those are all neurodegenerative diseases. And so how do you go about not necessarily not getting them, but pushing them out further, right? So that your health spans are just that much better over a quality period of time. And so he just like had broken down all the things, but like the main thing is catering to exercise, and then what does that exercise look like? And it's very much focused on anabolic. So a lot of his routines, being a longevity doctor, is focused on that anabolic movement. But you guys read the book Outlive. Have you read the book Outlive?
I'm in it right now. Yeah.
Oh man, the last chapter is the best chapter, so I'm not going to ruin it for you. But like, he just takes you through the principles of what that is, and ultimately what it comes down to is like how you're reducing your oxidative stress loads to elongate that health span, where you're just improving the quality of life over a period of time. But one of his main focuses right now is building muscle, is building a dense muscular structure for the purposes of longevity. He realized that like all those challenges, the swimming challenges, everything that he incorporated in really took a toll on his body, where it's like now more so catered, like where it's a very, very balanced approach to how he incorporates day to day for longevity purposes. Pretty cool stuff.
Well, that's like the concept of epigenetics, is that you're not determined by your genes, right? The genes like load the gun, your lifestyle then pulls the trigger of whether it's disease or health. And so, if you have cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, Parkinson's, neurodegenerative in your genetics, because your family has it and it's in there, right? You have these gene mutations. That doesn't mean you're going to get it. You can do a lot of things that our bodies are constantly turning over all the time. In a year, your cells will be a totally different person. You're still Matt, right? Soul-wise, but like your body will be new. And so if that's happening, how are we rebuilding it with good stuff? And so I think about that all the time. It's like we just talked about this in a previous episode, like today, you're setting the stage for whether or not you're going to be sick or healthy when you're older, right now.
For sure.
What age you're at.
I love the idea too of challenges. Like I try to incorporate challenges into my year to year, as far as like more healthy, sustainable challenges where I'm like, all right, I want to do this. But you have a kind of cool story that really your wife pushed on you a challenge that you weren't really necessarily. You're like, I don't know if I want to do that. You're like, she pushed you forward. So you were a national champion, and then you guys got married, and she's like, babe, I think you should do it one more time. You're like, wait a minute, I wasn't even thinking of that route. Am I right on that story where your wife kind of pushed you to the challenge? And then tell us about that.
Yeah, it was definitely a retired Rocky kind of moment. So, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if we're talking about this topic of, there's so many, Google can be a confusing rabbit hole to listeners, and you have to make sure that you pair yourself up with people that you trust, that are what we call the ACE, the authority, the celebrity, and the expert in your local realm or nationally, that can answer your questions and teach you. And that's my mind's thinking right now, even just off that question, how much things evolve with, back to what you said about bodybuilding, and the thought or the misconstrued conception of it. The people that compete over and over again 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year, their bodies aren't healthy. They're breaking it down so much that it's not
Ronnie
knowing.
Coleman, right?
It doesn't know what's going on. Well, even the weight room or lack of food or nutrition. Females, for example, if they're getting their body fat too low, they miss menstrual cycles. That's not a natural reason. So I think doing it in balance is very important. And now to answer your question, for me, I mean, I've competed, I think 4 times I can count, and I've accomplished what I've accomplished. But it's been an in and out kind of thing for me. Like I'm kind of like asleep. I'm doing it for a purpose. Now I'm 18. Okay. Didn't expect I would win a national championship. It allowed me to turn it into a business. It was a blessing, because then I became known in the industry. And this was before we had cell phones that, had social media and all this stuff. So this was 1998. So being able to get at the top, and then having people help me, I opened up my personal training studio. I had trainers underneath me. That was fantastic. I did that for all of my 20s and half of my 30s. But I mean, I was done. And then at 35, she was like, yeah, you're going to compete again. I'm like, you're crazy. I haven't done this for 17 years. Like, I've lived and done it once, as long as I've lived and not done it since. So it's like, but I was like, okay. So we got married, and I needed a coach again. Chris Aceto went through some health challenges, and Lee's kind of even more retired than he was the first time. So I just needed new guns, and there was a guy that really fit the mold, personality-wise, located in the New Jersey area. His name was Jeff Lopez. The amazing story behind Jeff is that he's a Christian guy, and he treated how he trained me that same way. So anytime we would make diet changes, he'd tell me what to eat, and then there'd be this 6 or 7 second pause on the phone. He'd go, nope, we're not going to do that. God told me we're going to change it this way. So I'm like,
That's awesome.
I'm like, okay, so we're not doing what you just said.
Yeah.
And he's like, nope, we're going to change it to this much protein instead.
As always, this episode is brought to you by Nuticious, convenient optimized superfood nutrition powered by nootropics, designed to elevate your physical and mental performance no matter what life throws at you. Nuticious has been proven to improve cognition, boost memory, and speed up mental and physical processing. Alfie, tell everyone where they can get it.
Yep, head on over to nutup.com to experience these benefits for yourself and live beyond limits today.
So, it sounds crazy to some listeners, but fast forward, I tell you, then I became out of nowhere in 17 years second in the world. So there was reasons why all that took place. And I feel like that is also propelled why I'm, writing my first book. It's in publishing right now. It just all encompasses the uniqueness and the challenges of what we have to offer if we just don't give up and just push forward and believe in ourselves too.
Yeah, let's talk about that book a little bit more, because I love the name of the book. I think it's how I just think about life. So talk about the book. There just isn't a finish line.
So the book title is There Is No True Finish Line. And it explains my story a little more detail. the challenges that I went through, even as a kid in high school, wearing that back brace, the mental toughness that it took. There were times in my life where I was even, I had suicidal thoughts because I was made fun of. Kids would come up and knock on the brace. It was this hard plastic shell, like you get molded for a cast. It was like that, but it was plastic, and I had to put it on every day. Could only take it off when I went to bed or took a shower. So it had 2 straps behind the back, which made it tight, and those were held on with some metal grommets. And if you broke the grommets, now you got to get new grommets. And again, it was 1994 to 96 and a half I was wearing that thing. So it wasn't like you could get them on Amazon Prime. So it was so then there were times where I was scared that I'm not wearing it because I'm waiting on grommets to come in. But it was a book that I wrote out of heart, it came with a faith base too, because as I evolved in my personal life, I involved in my spiritual life and faith foundation. So along the way, there were quotes and evangelists and pastors and people that I looked up to that really helped fuel me through those moments that I needed them. I mean, the way I thought when I was 18 to 20 is different than the way I thought at 35. I think almost anybody can say that. So I needed new challenges. I needed new thought processes to keep me stronger at that time in my life. At the time, it was an evangelist named Jonathan Shuttlesworth that I remember I was listening to his messages laying in bed in Las Vegas the afternoon right before finals. So just to keep myself focused. Because I'm a shy person when it comes to being on stage. I'm a gorilla in the gym, but if I have to stand up in front of a bunch of people and quote unquote show off, it's not my strong suit. So I had one of the past world champions and current world champions at that time knock on my door. I remember like, who's knocking on my door at the hotel room? And it was him. He said, "Can I come in?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." It was AJ Ellison, and he's like, "You've got this. You just have to come alive." And I was like, okay. So that's what I just focused on, is my routine and everything at that moment. And yeah, so the whole book encompasses faith and encompasses, it's not self-help. I don't believe in that. I believe in a higher power that helps you along. And of course your efforts are aligned to it, but I think that when you are at the worst point in your life and you have struggles that you cannot accomplish or overcome on your own, there has to be something to help you. And it just depends on what you decide that to be.
Yeah. And that faith principle then is like, I mean, it's pivotal for most people, right? You hit that point where you're like, man, I can't do this on my own. And I don't even have people that can help me, right? Because like, we're all just humans. We're going to let each other down. We're going to fail, right? But if you have that faith and just that security, knowing that like God's got me, you can kind of give it up at that point. The surrender principle, which is so hard, man, right? I struggle with that every single day. Like, just take it away. God, I'm good. Like, just giving it up, But yeah, it's huge, man. So when is the book ready, or when are you? I know you said it's publishing, so you might not have a date on that, but
it should be very soon in the next couple months. Awesome. I'm working on some endorsement parts right now. So
okay, sweet.
But yeah, as soon as that's done, we'll work on cover and should be ready.
Nice, man. Talk about kind of what you're doing with coaching and stuff now, because you obviously went through your own transformation, radical transformation, and now you're helping other people kind of do that. So
yeah, the best blessing for me is not to receive but to give. So I pay it forward, and I've done so where I can make it something that's financial to me too. As a Christian, I also believe in tithing and giving back that way. So it's kingdom building. That's what we talk about and believe in. And what I do now is to help educate people on the why and how to lose weight 100% naturally. So I believe that the drugs people are taking right now to lose weight quickly is a fad. There's not enough history and research behind them. They work, yes, but when you're done, do they teach you anything? What are you going to do with your...
You just rebound, right? Which is very inflammatory on the body. Your body's like, finally, all this weight's gone. And then it's like, oh, God, and it gains it all back. It's a lot of stress.
And we were just talking, a few minutes ago about longevity and beating genetics. So if you're taking something like that and have that kind of stress and rebound, now you're fighting against all that good knowledge we just expressed a little while ago. Yeah. So that's an example of things just, common sense fighting reality. I do it in a way where it involves some natural products that are amino acid based that bring up your hormone levels to where they should be. Does not exceed where they should be, like a rejuvenation clinic would. I'm not bashing them, but I'm sure they would agree with me that they never get it right the first time. So it's kind of like a plane trying to land in turbulence. You might take a little much, and then we'll blood test you again to see if you're a little low. We'll bring it back up again. So you're always trying to find that perfect spot. And then once you find it, it's going to change when the person changes. Yeah. Where this changes your hormone levels just to where they should be for your age.
They're like adaptogens, right? That's the term with like adaptogens, like the mushrooms that we put in the newts and stuff, is like they're gonna, if you're low, if your hormones are low, it'll raise them. If they're high, it'll lower them. They're like really amazing compounds. It's crazy.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And then a nutritional plan that the whole family can eat from. So there is food as well. You're not stapling your mouth shut to lose weight. You are going to have all the normal meals you have throughout the day. You're going to have a snack. I involve a lot of recipes too, so you can certainly eat what the family's eating, but you're just eating for your portion and for your goals. I had a female, average females lose about 15 pounds a month and males are about 20 pounds a month. And I had a female that lost 16 pounds and her husband just by default lost 20. Yeah. So it was like, man, that's a great testimony too. So
I love that. Cause I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things with like our optimizers program is that we're always at the beginning. We're like, dude, you got to get your wife on board. If she's not on board, she's going to be buying the cookies and stuff for the kids. And then, dude, your temptation's going to be there, right? You're going to sneak one and then we're going to have to yell at you. We don't want to do that. Yeah. Get everybody on the same page. That's really important, man. Yep. It's a unit.
And then there's, after you reach the goal, there's maintenance. So you never have to do products. It's not a hook on anything like that. There's no real small print. But once you balance your body out, you're able to sustain it. So it's a full teaching protocol and educates the person on why they're doing what they're doing for longevity.
Yeah, nice. And so it's primarily focused on fat loss, weight loss. That's kind of the most thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Primarily focused on fat loss. And, I have the common person that comes up to me and is like, hey, will you train me or help me build muscle? And I can do that. I can knock the dust off that and, help somebody out. But my focus is the epidemic of people that are pre-diabetic, that are gastric bypass patients. There's 1% death rate in gastric bypass. So it's just a scary thing. And none of these things from drugs to surgeries are teaching you anything. Yeah. It's right. Like I always put it, the analogy of a fishbowl. You going to drug the fish or clean the fishbowl? So
it's fantastic. Yeah. And like the analogy I use a lot of times when I see patients with like disc issues, right? This just made me think of it as like someone comes in with a herniated disc or a disc that's compressed. And so they're having nerve irritation in their spine. They're like, I was going to get an injection. It's like, you can get that injection. You're going to feel fantastic. That did not fix the disc. That did not, take the pressure off of that disc that's hitting the nerve. It just made you not feel it. Now you're probably going to feel good. You're going to go do a bunch of stuff you shouldn't be doing and make it even worse. Yep. So it's like, how do we actually fix the issue, which is what you're doing? And I mean, maybe a little devil's advocate here, but would you ever say that there's a time where you could use like, and I'm sure we're referring to the same drugs like semaglutide or so, those kind of peptides that they use for the weight loss for a brief period, but then educate someone to like, hey, when this is done, we got to make sure we're dialing in here.
Sure. Right? So the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So I don't discount walking into an office that's promoting semaglutide or that's promoting Ozempic. Mm-hmm. Oh no, they're just doing everything bad. No, I'll walk in and be like, hey, when your patients are done doing what you're having them do, refer them to me. I will teach them how to keep it off and sustain their weight loss. Yeah. So we still work hand in hand. Cool. Thoroughly believe in that because at the end of the day, what are we all doctors here to do? We're here to serve the patient. That's right. And we're not here to try to just get what we can out of them and then push them away. So one can always domino effect into the other and we work synergistically.
Yeah. I think you're very much like me and like Matt is like, yeah, I'm a doctor, but like I want to be more of like an educator, and I want my patients to come in here, learn as much from me as they can so they can do it on their own.
Right.
Obviously they can't decompress their spine on their own that much, and there's certain things you can't do, but if I get you healthy, then you just keep it there. I'm going to give you the tools. Now you do it. Like, take control of your life, right? This is you. Like, and I'm sure you've had to have this conversation. It's like, I can't care more about your health than you do.
Yeah.
If I do, that relationship, I don't even want to take that on, because then there's going to be problems there. You have to care, right? And you have to put in the effort.
Yeah. I think the analogy to, I love the enemy of the enemy is my friend. I love that. You give a man a fish, you got to teach a man to fish.
That's right.
And that's part of the educational process of like, how are you teaching them for that component of longevity? And I go back to this story that I just heard today. So I was telling Dr. Alessia this. Ed Milet was just talking about a scenario in his life. He was like in his mid-30s. And a doctor came up. He had a screen done on his chest. I think he was having some chest pains or whatever it might be. And a doctor came into the waiting room. And he already knew that like Ed had already had the screen done. But he came in there and there was like about 3 people in the waiting room. And he's like, can I speak to Edward Milet? And he's like, yeah, I'm Ed Milet. And so he comes up and he takes a look at him. He's like, jeez, I cannot believe these arteries are in that body. Come with me, son. And so he's like setting him up to like educate him, but he's like, all right, well, what's going on? What's in that folder? So he takes him to the back room and he sits him down. He's like, tell me about yourself, Ed. You got kids? He's like, yes, sir, I have 2 kids. And he's like, how old are they? He's like, 2 years old and 6 months old. And he's like, okay. He's like, you want to see your 2-year-old graduate from high school? He's like, yes. And so now he's thinking, what the heck is in that file? Like, tell me what's in that file. And he's like, got another question for you. He's like, do you want another man walking your daughter down the aisle? He's like, what is in that? What is in that file? Please tell me what's in that file right now. And he's like, well, you got to listen to me. You got to do step by step what I'm going to tell you. But he immediately grabbed on him with the significance of like what his lifestyle, what he was predisposed to and what his lifestyle was. He's like, wait a minute. So he calls that day Bella's wedding day. And he's like, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I set the foundation correctly in order to walk my daughter down the aisle. But it was one of those things where like, that's a doctor. That's like a teaching doctor. I was like, I'm going to teach this man.
Also created
fish.
some severity there too. Yeah. Dude, it's a big deal, bro.
This is a big deal.
I mean, that kind of goes back to like what we were talking about a little bit ago with like the genetic testing, right? I think everyone should kind of have an idea of where their genes are and what maybe their predispositions might be. But then it's like, what do you do with that? A lot of people just get it and they're like, oh, looks like I have heart disease in my genes. Fantastic. What are you going to do to combat that? How are you going to prevent that, right? And then put in the things into play so that that doesn't become an issue or that you can fight against it. Mm-hmm. Knowledge is power in that sense, right?
All right.
You got to know. And that's why we run biomarkers and that's why we do very thorough histories. I'm sure you do as well. It's like, what things are we dealing with here? What's going to possibly be a hindrance in the future and how do we prevent that?
Yeah, and a little piece of the mental challenge too. Like, what's the relationship with somebody has with their food and with their lifestyle?
Yeah, totally. Eating disorders, all that kind of stuff can get pretty deep. How are we looking on time?
Yeah, you want to get to the full field question?
Full field question. I love this question. I'm about to. We should brace ourselves. I feel like I'm gonna get thrown through the wall by his answer. It's gonna be so good. We have 6 pillars, and I think we've already shared these with you. But it's fuel, movement, sleep, mind, work, and spirit. And when you have all 6 pillars of the full field pyramid dialed in, it's not a pyramid, there's 6, right? So hexagon. If you have all 6 of those dialed in, you are living full fueled. How does Zeke Samples live full fueled, and what does that mean to you?
That is a great question. So full fueled, I would say, is faith, family, and finances. I have pillars of my own, and I feel like when you have balances like you guys do, life can be maximized. Everything that we do can really be taken to another level, and it all works along the lines of giving back to and finding our purpose. It's finding something that's bigger than ourselves and serving that purpose. So that's how I live life fully fueled.
Hell yeah, you do. Man, that's a great answer, brother.
I love that, man.
Is there anything you want to leave the audience with? Any advice? Tell them where they can find you if they're interested in learning more.
Sure. So my personal website is my first and last name.com, zekesamples.com. And then my weight loss website is my business name, Surreal Body, and then HN. The H stands for health, the N stands for nutrition. It's just shortened.
Cool. Awesome. SurrealBodyHN.com.
Yep.
And we'll make sure those goes in the show notes.
Yeah.
But, the only way the word's going to get out is if you share it.
right.
So we appreciate you listening today. Thank you so much, Zeke, for coming on to the show today. And we'll do one of those.
Oh, dude.
And,
I'll give you both
Paper, rock, scissors.
and man, as
Don't
always,
ever do that again.
we expect you to live full fueled and live beyond limits, baby.